Let's see if it works now. Sorry, just bear with me. I was trying to live stream a couple different times. I did one for 30 minutes, and then I realized that there's no audio. So
Let's see
let
if
me.
it works now.
Oh, yep,
Sorry,
it
just
does work. All right, perfect. Finally. But anyways, so I already did this, but I'm gonna do it again for the boys. Basically, this live stream is going to be about my predictions for the champs by the end of 2025. We're going to go in each weight class, talk about potential contenders for the belts, who I think is going to have the belt by the end of the year, and yeah, we'll go through every men's weight class at least. So starting off with flyweight. I think the answer is going to be Alexandre Pantoja. He's been extremely dominant. He has beaten literally everybody in the division essentially. The only fight that I thought was very close and could have went to the other guy was Steve Urseg. I thought Urseg gave him a really difficult fight, and arguably you could have given it to Urseg, but regardless, Pantoja won. But literally, when you look at everybody on this list, Brandon Royval he beat twice. Moreno he beat three times technically. Albazi, I believe he beat as well. I'm not sure about that one though. Kai Kara, he beat him. Tasuda Taira, he has not beat him, but I think he would beat him. Um, and I don't know, like literally everybody on this list, he's either beaten or I think he'll beat them. So I don't think there's all that much competition. I think Pantoja is going to be the flyweight champ by the end of the year. But possible competition would probably either be Royval or Moreno. Um, those two guys are the most likely to get a title shot this year. Depending how many times Pantoja fights this year, maybe you can get a guy like Tetsuda Taira, but he is coming off a loss to Royval. So I think next is probably going to be Royval or Moreno. And if he beats them again, which I do think he probably would, Pantoja, it's possible Pantoja could move up to bantamweight. He's already had a bunch of defenses at flyweight. Maybe he doesn't want to go up to bantamweight, but if he does, he certainly deserved it. Um, so we'll see what happens. But as I said, Pantoja is my prediction. But moving on to bantamweight, Marab's currently the champ. I actually have a video talking about this. Marab versus Umar. In the video, I did say I think Marab's going to win, and I do think so. I think his overall pace and pressure is going to be a little bit too much for Umar. Um, Obviously, Umar is very good. His striking is good. He's got great kicks, great wrestling. All that stuff is great. But I just think he fights at kind of a slower pace. And when a guy like Marab is really going to push the pace on Umar, I think it's going to be something very foreign to Umar, maybe a little bit difficult. And even if he does stop a lot or even all of the takedowns that Marab throws his way, um, as long as Marab's able to press Umar alongside the cage, he's winning. Obviously, it's not an exciting fight, but he's winning in those moments. So I do think that that Marab's going to win. Obviously, it's a very close fight. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Umar does end up winning this fight. But we'll see what happens. It should be a good fight. Should be a close fight. But if Umar does win this fight, I do think he's going to have to finish Marab. I think the style that Marab has makes it essentially impossible to beat him by decision. So we'll see. A little bit of a lower weight class. Umar doesn't have too many finishes on his record, so I do think Marab's going to win, but close fight. We'll see what happens. But my official prediction for the champ of the bantamweight division by the end of the year is actually Peter Yan. I think especially if Umar beats Marab, I think Yan has a really good shot at being the champ because Peter Yan has been amazing in the bantamweight division forever. Obviously, a former champ. Obviously, has beaten a lot of guys. Really impressive boxing. But one thing that gives me a lot of confidence for why I think he's going to be the champ by the end of the year is his wrestling improvements. Obviously, he was always a really good wrestler, but in that fight against Figueiredo and also in some of his other more recent fights, Jan has shown a real improvement within his wrestling. And I think that improvement that he's shown is going to prove to be huge in either Marab or Umar fight. I think the Marab fight is probably the toughest fight possible for Jan in the entire weight class. I do think it's going to be a really tough fight to win, but specifically against Umar, I think there's a real opportunity. And if Umar does fight Peter Yan for the belt or just in general, I think Yan wins that fight. Umar is obviously very good, as I said, but I think the wrestling improvements that we've seen from Yan is going to help with his defensive wrestling. And if the fight stays on the feet, nobody's better than Yan. This guy's boxing just incredible. His kicks are really good as well. He's just a very, very impressive striker out there. And anybody in the weight class that has to stand on the feet with him for extended periods is probably going to lose to Peter Yan. So we'll see what happens. It's probably going to be one of the three of Marab, Umar, or Peter Yan. But if I had to say, I think Peter Yan's going to be the champ by the end of the year. But we'll see. Moving on to featherweight, Ilia Topuria is the answer. Ilia obviously is extremely impressive, one of the more impressive fighters in the entire UFC. Insane striking, insane power, great grappling, great wrestling, great jiu-jitsu. This guy's just an all-around beast. A lot to like with this guy's game. And also, he has said that he's not going to fight at featherweight anymore. I don't believe that. I think you were going to see him probably only once in 2025, and it's either going to be up against Volkanovski or Diego Lopez. Probably nobody else, if he does even fight at featherweight this year. But I think he beats both guys. Volkanovski is really talented, great fighter, great champion for a really long time. But I just think the physicality difference is going to be the difference. Volk could be landing at will. I don't think it would happen, but theoretically, he could be landing at will, landing great jabs, landing great leg kicks for an entire 4 rounds. But in the fifth round, if Ilya lands one big shot on Volkanovski, the fight's going to be over from there. Obviously, Ilya knocks out everybody. He just knocked out Max Holloway, which is a crazy thing to say. But especially Volkanovski, who's been knocked out a few times in a row, pretty badly actually. I do think that definitely favors Ilya. And a fight against Diego Lopez. Lopez is very good. He's very physical. He's actually a good amount bigger than Ilya, but I think Ilya is just a lot more technical, both on the feet and on the ground. Although Diego is very good on the feet and he's very, very good on the ground. But at the end of the day, I think Ilya does win that fight. But we'll see how many times he fights this year at featherweight, at least. I know he wants to move up to 155. So my official prediction for who's going to be champ at the featherweight division by the end of the year is Ilia Topuria. And I'm pretty confident in that one. But let's move on to lightweight. This one is pretty similar to my prediction at featherweight. I think Islam's going to be the champ by the end of the year. He might fight 2 times this year. He's definitely not going to fight more than twice. At least at lightweight. Maybe he wants to move up, depending on what happens with Bilal. But I don't think there's too much competition for him at lightweight. I know there's a lot of good fighters, but I don't think too many guys have a real chance to beat him. I know Armin's fighting him in January in a week or two. Armin's a very good fighter, obviously great wrestling, very explosive, a lot of power. And maybe he'll have his moments, but I think for that fight, Islam's going to win by decision. I think Armin's a little bit too good to get finished, honestly. I think he's very, very good basically everywhere. And I do think Islam's going to win, but I think he's going to win by decision. Maybe Armin will have some moments in that fight, but I think Islam's going to win a convincing decision, but we'll see what happens in that fight. Outside of that, it's really only Charles Oliveira. Gaethje's not going to fight for the belt, most likely. Poirier, the same. Holloway, probably not going to fight for the belt. Dan Hooker, possibly Dan Hooker. That'd be kind of funny, actually, if he got a title shot, but it's really only him. Everybody else is not going to fight for the belt this year, especially considering Islam's only going to fight twice, probably, at lightweight, if even he fights twice at lightweight this year. So Islam's going to be the champ by the end of the year. Moving on to welterweight, I think it's going to be Shavkat. That's my prediction. Shavkat versus Bilal. I think Shavkat's going to win that fight. I think he's just a lot more dangerous. Actually, I think that's pretty clear. Both on the feet and on the ground, he can submit you. He can knock you out on the feet. There's a lot that Shavkat can do. And Bilal isn't known to be one of the more dangerous guys in the UFC. Actually, he basically has no finishes. The only finish that he did have was a standing TKO against Sean Brady. But the wild card that I want to throw out there is Carlos Prates. I know he's number 13, the number 13th ranked welterweight at this point, and it might be hard for him to get a title shot this year. But there has been some rumors of him fighting Leon. I don't know if they're true or not. It's coming from Prates. It could be BS. But if he does fight Leon, I think that could potentially be a really good stylistic matchup for Prates, because both of these guys fight really well at range, but Prates has the power advantage and he also has the reach advantage. So even if Leon is landing well, even if he goes for takedowns and and has some top time upside, at the end of the day, I think there's a real chance that Prates can knock out Leon. And if he knocks out Leon, who's currently the number one ranked welterweight in the world, there's a possibility that he gets a title shot. And if it's Shavkat versus Prates, obviously I would favor Shavkat. He does have the wrestling, although his wrestling, in my opinion, is not as good as it's perceived to be. He did struggle taking down Wonder Boy. He did take him down eventually, but he struggled. And also against Ian Gary, he struggled taking him down as well. So I don't think his wrestling's as good as advertised. I still think it is very good, but maybe not as good as advertised. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, my prediction will be Shavkat, but my wild card that I want to throw out there is Carlos Prates to be the champ of welterweight by the end of the year. But we'll see what happens. Middleweight, this is a little bit controversial, but my prediction is Dricus. I think Dricus is going to be the champ by the end of the year. He's fighting Sean Strickland. I think he's going to win. I think he's going to finish Strickland. Strickland is obviously very defensively sound, very awkward style. But I think the fact that this is the second time that they're fighting, that's going to be a benefit to Dricus. And yeah, as he was having more success as the fight was progressing. So as he got more information on Strickland, he was landing a little bit better, having more success. So I think that he has. So now that I think that he has that one fight under his belt, that experience from the first fight, in the second fight, he's going to land a lot more on Strickland, and I think he is going to finish him, as I said. Whether that's a submission or a TKO, we'll see. But I think Dricus is going to win. But the reason why I say this is a controversial pick is because most people have Khamzat Chimaev to be the champ by the end of 2025. But I wouldn't be surprised if Khamzat is the champ. But I think if anyone were to beat Khamzat, it would be Dricus. Dricus is just ridiculously physical. Obviously, he hits very hard, but more importantly, on the ground, he is actually pretty technical and he's very strong, which I think is going to be huge against Khamzat. And if he can just survive in the first round versus Khamzat, which I think he could, I think the tide could really turn in Dricus's favor as the fight goes longer. In the second round, Khamzat is going to be significantly more tired than he is in the first round, the third round even more, fourth and fifth even more. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dricus is even able to finish Khamzat. But I think the key for Dricus is just surviving that first round. Khamzat is probably the best first round fighter of all time. This guy, he's just incredible pressure. He's going to take you down. It's just going to happen. And he's going to threaten with a lot of submissions, ground and pound strikes. It's going to be a nightmare in the first round for Dricus or anybody in the UFC. But if Dricus is able to survive round one, I think he wins the fight. But we'll see. And especially if Dricus, I don't think this is very likely, but especially if Dricus is able to stop takedowns in the first round, it's gonna be a very good night for Dricus. But we'll see what happens in that fight. But as I said, my prediction is Dricus. A couple other contenders could be Imavov if he beats Izzy. Bahalio could be a potential contender, but I don't think either one of those guys are going to fight for the belt this year, at least. I see Dricus as a guy who's very smart with his career. I don't think he's going to fight 3 times this year. I think he's probably going to fight twice this year. So we'll see. Maybe he fights 3 times, but if he fights twice, it's going to be against Strickland and against Khamzat. But yeah, so I think Dricus is going to be the champ by the end of the year. But moving on to light heavyweight, once again, I think we're going to have the same champ. I think Alex is going to be champ. There's not too many fights for him, honestly, at light heavyweight, and I wouldn't be surprised if he only fought once this year at light heavyweight, at least. The next fight for him is Magomed. That should be the next fight for him. It could be a tough fight with the wrestling, but Magomed doesn't have the best IQ out there. Especially in that fight against Jan Blachowicz. In rounds 3, 4, 5, he was able to take down Jan at will and win all 3 of those rounds. But in the first 2 rounds, he was staying on the feet, didn't shoot a single takedown, and got his legs hurt pretty significantly, both legs actually, which kind of just shows the lack of IQ that Ankalaev has. And I think Pereira could really take advantage of that. If Magomed stays on the feet too long with Pereira, I think the leg kicks are going to be huge, and the jab and left hook, obviously, is going to be huge as well for Pereira. I will say Magomed is a very talented striker. He showed that in a couple different fights. I mean, this guy is really, really good, and I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if he knocked out Pereira, but I don't think it's very likely. I think Pereira is just in a league within his own. at least in light heavyweight at striking. This guy is just extremely technical. He knows what he's doing out there. And if you're fighting Pereira, just take him down. That's the way to beat him. Easier said than done, but that's the easiest path to victory against Pereira. On the feet, this guy is really, really just a nightmare. Very difficult to stop. And I do think Alex is going to beat Magomed. And if he does beat Magomed, I don't think there's anybody else left for him at light heavyweight, at least at this current moment. Yuri's not going to fight him. He already beat him twice. Jamal Hill, possibly. Pereira already beat him once, but possibly if Jamal gets a really impressive finish over Yuri, maybe they make that fight. But even then, I don't think it's very likely. I think they do Alex Magomed maybe in March or April. And then after that, if Pereira wins, maybe he goes up to heavyweight finally and fights Tom Aspinall or whoever. I don't know. But yeah, outside of Jamal Hill, I really don't think there's any other contenders that could legitimately get a title shot this year. Jan Blachowicz is not going to get it. Rakic is just coming off a loss. He's probably not going to get it. Olberg, a couple wins, but I don't think he's necessarily on that level yet. I think he needs a big win over an Ankalaev. I mean, they're not going to make that fight, but theoretically, an Ankalaev, a Yuri Prohaska, even a Jamal Hill or Jan Blachowicz. I think one of those four guys, if he fights and beats, then you can make an argument that he deserves a title shot. But at this current moment, I don't really think so. Roundtree already got a title shot. Krylov, no. Ozdemir, he needs a few more fights. Johnny Walker wouldn't happen. And yeah, that's really it. So I think there's just going to be one fight at light heavyweight for the belt this year. Magomed and Pereira's going to win and stay champ. But let's move on. So heavyweight, John Jones is technically the champ, but the answer is Tom Aspinall. He's going to be the champ by the end of the year. It's pretty clear, I think. Even if John fights somebody else and he wins, I think he's going to retire by the end of the year anyway. If we get, hopefully, we get the Tom versus John fight. But if not, Aspinall is going to win, or Aspinall is going to be a champ. And there's not too much competition, I don't think, in my opinion. Cyril Gahn, maybe, but I don't think Gahn is nearly as good as people thought he was. He's good on the feet, technical, pretty fast. Well, really fast, honestly, for heavyweight. But his wrestling is just not there. And I don't know. At times, he just doesn't make the best decisions out there. I don't think Gahn beats Aspinall. I don't think he also even has enough power to knock out Aspinall. Aspinall is a guy you're going to have to finish. I don't think Gon can do that. Volkov's he's improving. He is very good. But also I don't think he's good enough to beat Aspinall or even be a champ, to be honest. What he does out there, he does well. He fights on the outside, throws body kicks, leg kicks, nice jabs, left straights. Could possibly take you down. Has improved wrestling. Does have a submission against Tai Tuivasa for what that's worth. But I don't think Volkov is nearly good enough to be a champ. So there's that. Curtis Blades was always a guy I thought could be champ, but just didn't have the IQ for it. He's really good. He has really good striking, or well, let's say good striking, a lot of power, decent technically, has pretty good wrestling as well. I think he's a very well-rounded, one of the more well-rounded fighters at heavyweight. Has the speed, has the power, has the ability, but I just think his IQ out there is just not going to allow him to become champ. I was high on him for a long time, but I think he's going to beat a lot of guys, but I don't think he'll be champ necessarily. But yeah, so Tom Aspinall is my official prediction for that. Talking about the women's weight classes, who really cares? But if I had to say, I'll just go Weili. She's going to be champ. She's real good. For flyweight, it's either going to be Shevchenko or for let's say my prediction will be Figueroa. Figueroa. I can't say it, but number two. I think she's going to be champ, and then here it's going to be Kayla Harrison for bantamweight. Pena is not that great in my opinion, but yeah, there's that. But let's quickly take a look at the UFC schedule. So this week, or well, this is next weekend. It's not a good card. Let's just call it how it is. It's a terrible card, but at least we got fights back. It's been a while that we had no fights, so just to get some fights, it's exciting. But just going through it, I think Almeida is going to beat Al Hassan. I think it's going to be a really fun fight, actually. I think we're going to see a knockout for Almeida, but Yeah, I think Almeida's gonna win. And then in Kopylov, Chris Curtis. This could also be a really fun one. Curtis is very good, but he struggles with movement. Whenever his opponents move at all, he gets frustrated and doesn't have a lot of success. And Kopylov has good movement. He has great kicks, great boxing, great kickboxing, and great movement, as I said. So I think Kopylov is going to win this fight. He's going to frustrate Curtis, and I think he's going to probably finish him, honestly. But we'll see. Curtis could be difficult to finish at times, so we'll see what happens. But I think Kopylov is going to win by finish. This fight, I think is going to be actually a really good one. C-Rod versus Bashi. Bashi's was on the contender. He looked really impressive, very very impressive. And C-Rod is a guy who's a really good fighter, actually, and he's beaten a lot of the contenders that the UFC has thrown his way, or not contenders, sorry, prospects that the UFC has thrown his way. So I think this is going to be a really good fight. I don't know. I don't have a real read on this. If I had to say, honestly, I think Bashi's going to win. I was really impressed by his performance, but it was a contender series. C-Rod obviously has much better competition under his belt and has had victories over some impressive guys. Um, but if I had to say, I think Bashi. That would be my prediction for this matchup. But oh, sorry. Let's go to the prelims. There's not really not much on this card, but let's just move on to UFC 311. So this is going to be really good in a few weeks from now. For the main event, we got Islam versus Arman. I haven't made a video on it yet. Maybe I'll do it. But I think Islam's going to win this fight. As I said before, Islam is just very good everywhere. Arman is honestly very good everywhere too. But I think Islam's going to beat Arman by decision. I think it could be close. It could be either a 3-2 or a 4-1 scorecard. But I think regardless, even if it's 3-2, I think it's going to be very obvious who won, and it's going to be Islam. I think Islam just, as I said, is just too good on the feet. He's very defensively sound. He'll land his jabs. He'll land his left straight. His best shot on the feet is that left high kick. Who knows how effective it's going to be against Arman? But that's his best shot. Maybe he's able to hurt Arman, possibly. I don't think it's very likely, honestly, but it's possible. And on the ground, this guy's just very good. Finding submissions, finding positions, ground and pound shots. This guy's really good. Arman has great wrestling as well, but I just think Islam's going to win this fight. But we'll see. Hopefully, it's a good fight. But I think Islam by decision. That's my prediction. For the co-main, I did make a video talking about this. I said Maram's going to win. I still believe that. I just think the overall pace and pressure of Marab is going to be what takes it. Umar is very good. He has good striking, really good kicks, really good wrestling. But I don't think Marab needs to take Umar down, as crazy as it sounds, to beat him. I think he can press him alongside the cage with just pressure and win that way. Obviously, that's not an exciting way to win, but I think that's how he could win. Um, and as I said before in my video, and even before talking about the rankings, I think in order for anybody to beat Merab, they have to finish him. And when you're talking about a lower weight class like bantamweight, it becomes that much tougher to finish guys. But also Umar, he has finishes, but not too many finishes on his under his belt. So I do think Merab's going to win, but it could be a close fight, or it probably will be a close fight. Umar's going to have his moments, Merab's going to have his moments, but I think Merab's going to take it in the end. Um, Now, Yuri versus Jamal Hill actually just recorded a video. It's coming out Tuesday, 2 p.m., so be on the lookout for that. But my prediction is Yuri. I think Yuri's going to win because on paper, when you look at this fight, it seems like it's a really good stylistic matchup for Jamal Hill. Jamal is known as a guy that actually fights really well off the back foot. He's also a sniper out there. He has that left hand, signature left hand that he has a lot of power in, a lot of confidence in, and he's knocked out a lot of guys. And Yuri is coming off a TKO loss or a knockout loss. Honestly, it was a pretty bad knockout versus Alex Pereira, so maybe his chin's not as good as it used to be. But I still, although all those factors are true, I still think Yuri's going to win. I think the pressure and the wild nature of Yuri is actually going to prove to be pretty difficult for Jamal Hill. And also, I think two other factors that are huge. Is Jamal Hill is coming off two significant leg injuries, which I think are pretty big because it'll limit his movement. And when you're fighting a guy like Yuri, you want to get out of the way of those crazy shots, whether he's throwing head kicks or he's throwing crazy spinning elbows or whatever it is. You want to be able to be mobile and get out of the way. But the fact that he is coming off two significant leg injuries, who knows how his mobility is going to be against Yuri. So I think he could possibly be a sitting duck at times and get caught by Yuri. But also the other factor that kind of ties into this is recently he said that he's 230 plus pounds just a few weeks before fighting at 205 pounds. So there could be a potential tough weight cut for Jamal Hill. And if he has a tough weight cut, that a lot of negatives arise because of that. Obviously, his durability could be a question. His cardio could be a question, and I just think due to those factors, I think Yuri is going to win this fight. Although on paper it doesn't look great for him. Um, but yeah, but let's move on to Dariush Moicano. I think Moicano is going to win. Dariush is a really good fighter, really good ground game on the feet. He does have some stuff, but I think Moicano is going to win because he's coming off a great win over BSD, a really impressive and surprising win. At least for me, I didn't think he was going to be BSD, especially finish him, and as convincing as it was a really great performance from Moicano. But also, Dariush is getting older. He's coming off a couple of pretty bad knockout losses in a row. He has talked about retirement. He said if he loses this fight, he's going to retire. And usually, when guys have that mentality, they don't look great out there. Maybe they don't train as hard as they otherwise would have. And I think Moicano's going to win. I think although they actually, ironically, are the same age, I think Moicano's on the come up where Dariush is on the fall off a little bit, and I think he's probably going to retire after this fight. Hopefully, for Dariush's sake, he doesn't get finished, or it's not a brutal finish because he is coming off a couple of pretty bad knockout finishes in a row. But we'll see what happens. Holland DeRitter, I don't have a I don't have true conviction on this fight. DeRitter has a very interesting style. He's going to be looking for submissions. Holland obviously is going to be looking for that knockout, but I don't know. I don't really have a true read. If I had to say, I probably would go DeRitter just because Holland doesn't necessarily seem to be as focused as he once was. When you talk about a year ago or 2 years ago, this guy was fighting 4 times a year, 5 times a year. Sometimes he was crazy active, but at this point, he's really slowed down in the amount of fights that he's been taking. He's coming off honestly a few not so great performances against MVP. That was really not a good performance. Um, but actually, I think he beat a legit check in his last fight. I don't know if that was his last fight or not, but that was a good performance. But I don't know. I question his mentality, how much he's really into it, especially now that he's not fighting. He always really throughout his entire career, there was always question marks on how much he really trained or how much he really cared about applying himself to his UFC career. But at least in the past, he was fighting a ton of times. And when you're fighting that much, obviously you're training. But now the fact that he's not fighting nearly as much, I guess there's those questions. Is he really training? Is he not? We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if Holland found the knockout, as the Ritter does have a very odd game on the feet, let's say. But yeah, if I had to say, I'll say the Ritter. But now let's move on to the prelims. So it's unfortunate. I'm a fan of Johnny Walker, but I think Guskov wins this. I think Walker just has gotten knocked out way too many times. Guskov is pretty good on the feet, not great, but pretty good. And I think he's going to win. But hopefully for Johnny's sake, I'm a fan of Johnny. Hopefully he wins, but I think it's unlikely. Talbot versus Barcelos. I think this could be a really good fight, actually. It's a good test for Talbot. Talbot has looked tremendous. His fight against Cameron Simon was really impressive. Really, really impressive. He completely dominated Cameron. But Barcelos is a really good test for him. Barcelos is a really good fighter. He's very old. So I do think Talbot's going to win. But I wouldn't be surprised if this goes to decision. Would be the toughest test of Talbot's career thus far. But at the end of the day, I do think Talbot's going to win. Maybe he finds a finish, or I wouldn't be surprised if it was a relatively close fight. But as I said, Talbot's going to win in the end. Almeida versus Spivak. Almeida's going to win. Almeida has made questionable decisions in the past, especially against Curtis Blades. I don't know what he was doing in that fight, but he is really good at what he does. His wrestling is elite, honestly. He's smaller than everybody that he fights out there, but he's flinging guys around. He took down Derek Lewis a million times. Derek Lewis is 1,000,000 pounds. He did the same thing with Curtis Blades, and Blades actually has really good wrestling, but he was flinging Curtis Blades around in the first round, which is really impressive to see. So yeah, I think Almeida is going to win either by decision or maybe a finish, but honestly, he doesn't finish too many guys. So let's say decision victory for Almeida. Dumas versus Zachary Reese. Interesting fight. I think both guys are really powerful on the feet, but also really not defensively sound whatsoever. So I think we're going to see a first round finish in this fight, unless they're both very wary of each other's power and maybe they fight a little bit slower. But if I had to say, it's probably going to be a first round finish. Um, I think Zachary Reese gets it done. I'm not too high on Dumas. He has found a way to win a lot of fights, so I'll give him that. But I do think he's not that great of a fighter, if I had to say. So I think Zach Reese wins. I don't think Reese is a great fighter either. But in this matchup, I think Reese finds a way to win. TKO's Dumas, but let's move on. So Dawson versus Ferreira. This is an interesting one. I think I don't know what the odds are, but I know Ferreira is an underdog. I don't know how much of an underdog. I think there's real value though on Ferreira or Ferreira, whatever however you say it. He is coming off a really impressive win. He's a really good fighter. On the feet, he's talented. On the ground, he's talented. Really good jiu-jitsu. Honestly, pretty good wrestling as well. Just got unlucky in his career in some of his fights. Um, but I think there's real value on Fajeda, honestly, against Grant Dawson. Dawson's great on the ground, but on the feet, he's obviously very shaky. He did get knocked out by Bobby Green not too long ago. Um, and uh, and I think if the fight stays on the feet, I think we're going to be seeing a Fajeda TKO victory. But if Dawson can take him down and hold him down for 3 rounds, then yeah, he'll win. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's an interesting fight. Rosa versus Perez. I don't think Perez is that good, or Perez. I don't think she's that good. She has some skill, but not amazing. I don't know. I don't really have a read on it though. Maybe I'll go Rosa. I don't know. No, I'm not too sure on that one, honestly. Nakamura versus Guskov. That's an interesting fight. I do like a lot of what Nakamura does. He can really do it all. He can wrestle, he can strike. Guskov is good, durable, good wrestling. But I think Nakamura continues his win streak, goes 10-0. I don't think Guskov is going to be the guy to beat him. Um, but yeah, let's move on. So Tercios for Sopai. I think Sopai is going to win, and I actually think he's a very good fighter. I know he did get finished recently, a pretty bad finish, switch knee. Um, but I'm forgetting the name or the guy who beat him. But regardless, if you watch that fight, Sopai was having a lot of success. In the first round, he was doing really well in the striking department. He was wrestling effectively. He had a lot of control time. He was threatening submissions. And really, the reason why he got finished in that third round, he just gassed out. A newer fighter, I believe that was his debut in that fight. Just a little bit newer to MMA, or well, at least to the UFC. Maybe didn't pace himself as well as he should have. And he really gassed out pretty badly, and that's really why he got finished. I don't think it was a skill deficiency. Um, it was more just him gassing out, and I think he's going to make some adjustments. I don't think he's going to gas out as much, and I think Tercios is not nearly as good of a fighter as he fought in his last fight. So I think Sopai's going to win, and I think he's going to find a finish, honestly. But moving on to Tajir, I think he's going to win. Actually, I don't really know too much about Clayton Carpenter, uh, if I'm going to be honest, but we'll see. Probably, if I had to say, Tajir, but um, that's an interesting one. I don't really know. We'll see. But um, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, we have a couple of good cards. I'll quickly touch upon Izzy versus Imavov. I'll make a video about this pretty soon, but I think Izzy's going to win. Imavov is really fast on the feet, and he's pretty technical. His wrestling is okay, not great, but Izzy has great defensive wrestling, so I think it's going to stay on the feet for basically the whole fight. But I think Izzy just has too much experience. He's too technical on the feet. Uh, um, and I just think he's going to win. Obviously, there has been questions about how motivated he is in the past, but I think fighting an up and comer actually could be pretty motivating for Izzy. So we'll see. I think Izzy wins this fight, but yeah, I'll make a more in depth breakdown in the future. But yeah, I'll talk about some of these fights and other some of these cards and some fights in the cards in other live streams. But yeah, this is the first live stream I've ever done. I made a few live streams before, but as I said, I was struggling with figuring out how to use this thing. The audio wasn't working. So yeah. But anyways, this is fun. I would like to make live streams a regular thing on this channel. I know I only post once a week right now. My schedule is Tuesdays every Tuesday at 2 p.m. That's when I post. But I'm gonna be focusing more on this channel. I'm gonna be posting more. Already for this next week, I'm gonna start posting shorts on my channel, so you can get a little bit more concise versions of my videos if you're interested in that. And also, I'm gonna be making Fridays streaming days where I'll just talk about upcoming fights, predictions on fights, look at the rankings, making fights, be matchmaker a little bit, talk to you guys. I know there's not too many people in this live stream right now. I know my channel's a little bit smaller. I wasn't expecting too many people. Um, at least for my first live stream. But hopefully, as the channel gets bigger, we get more and more people, and I can interact with you guys. If you guys have any questions, I can answer your questions, and yeah, we can just have fun for an hour or whatever. But yeah, but that was a live stream. I hope you guys enjoyed. Um, uh, we'll get back to this as I said every Friday. But I'll work out the timing for it. It'll probably be 4 or 5 p.m. Every Friday. But um, but yeah, but we'll figure it out. I'll put in the description of every video talking about my schedule for my uploads. As I said, my schedule right now is every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Long form content is going to be coming out every Thursday at 2 p.m. A short is going to be coming out, and also every Friday I'm going to try to do a live stream at 4 or 5 p.m. But yeah, anyways, it's been fun. Really fun stream. I can't wait to interact with you guys in the future. I hope you guys enjoyed. For all of you that watched it, and if you watched the replay, I hope you guys enjoy it. But yeah, it's been fun. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, boys.